Hey, welcome everybody. Happy Tuesday. Welcome to Chalk Talk. I am your host, Kim Davis. Today is Tuesday, March the 22nd. It is officially spring. We had a rough weather start in Houston today. I don't know where you're tuning in from, what part of the country or world, but the sun is coming out. The roads are getting better, so I hope those of you who are in the area were able to navigate your way around the city safely. So welcome to Chalk Talk. Man, a lot has happened since the last time we were together, at least on our Tuesday show. We had a special show on Friday afternoon talking about the Deshaun Watson trade, right? We've been waiting for it. We knew it was coming. We were expecting it, and it happened on Friday afternoon. We're going to talk about the Deshaun Watson trade today. We're going to also talk about really what this means for the next phase. I'm calling it phase 2. The Texans aren't saying that, but I'm calling it phase 2 of the Houston Texans rebuild. What will they do? Like, what are they looking for? How do you build this team? Let's talk about free agency in general, what the Deshaun Watson trade has done to the division, other divisions. Deshaun, in case you've been in a cave, Deshaun is now officially a member of the Cleveland Browns organization. All right, he is no longer a Houston Texan. The deal is done. But we'll talk about the deal. And there have been some really mixed reactions to the trade, and I would love to know your thoughts about it. There are mixed reactions to the trade from a football perspective, and then the contract piece of it. There are people who have mixed reactions to that, and what it means for the teams that were left behind. We'll talk about that. Also today, I got to give a shout out to the Houston Rockets. I've been talking about the Rockets. I cover them. I watched last night's game on television. I was not in the building. They got down by 23 points to the Washington Wizards. Came back and won that game. I'm going to let you hear from Coach Silas and also from Christian Wood, who had 39 points. He had almost a perfect night. He was like 14 of 18 from the field, 8 of 9 from 3. He was perfect from the three-point line, which we know he struggled from at times. I think he's about a 62% free throw shooter. It was a great night for Seawood. But what that means for this young Rockets team, listen, there are only 10 games left in this season. But I've been saying all along, the work that Coach Silas and that staff has done, continues to do with this young club, they're young guys, has been, it's been good. It's been impressive, and I know sometimes we get impatient because Houston Rockets fans, we're used to being in the playoff, we're used to being in the hunt for so long that it was odd for you guys. It's been odd for Rockets fans to have a season where last year they were in the lottery. This year they'll be in the lottery, but this season, they've been competing, right? They compete. They've had some tough losses, but you cannot really fault this club for competing. They've been competing. They've been growing. Their young players are growing up a little bit and right in front of our eyes. And I think next year you're going to see a very different ball club. No, I'm not saying that they're going to be on their way to the championship, but talking about them being competitive and making a shot, a run at postseason next year, depending on what Rafael Stone and his personnel staff is able to do with the draft and free agency, it should be interesting. I'm going to let you hear from Seawood and also from Coach Silas. And then, of course, they're the Houston Astros, who last week we were celebrating the fact that the Major League Baseball lockout was over. I'm still glad about that. Now the Astros are in spring training, making their way toward a shortened spring training, hurtling forward toward the start of the regular season. And Carlos Correa, well, now that's done, right? So if nothing else happened over the past week for Houston sports fans, there's been some clarity, right? That's the word. There's clarity in this Texans situation, right? There's a Deshaun Watson move. That deal is done. There's clarity about Carlos Correa. He is now a member of the Minnesota. He went to Minnesota, y'all. Can y'all believe he went to Minnesota? He had a 3-year deal. He's got to opt out after each year. And there's been some... I'm not at spring training, right? So I just know what I've been hearing from colleagues. And so there's been mixed reports there too. There's some reports that say Carlos's team didn't hear back from the Astros, because you're like, why wouldn't the Astros try to match that deal? And then there are people in Carlos's camp, family members, I think a mother-in-law or someone, who said, no. Scott Boras reached out to Click, the general manager, to Jim Crane, the owner, and never heard back. Yeah, I don't know what's true. What I know is Carlos Correa is gone. And we were so hoping that Los would be around. He was a huge part of this franchise, right? He's a huge part of this Houston Astros team. But they've got a young man named Pena that we talked about throughout the season last year in AAA, and how he was coming along. And we'll see. He's going to get a shot to be a part of this middle infield. And if he comes back and is healthy, is the Bregman we saw before he got injured, and with Altuve on the other side, I mean, they could still have a really strong infield. He is not Carlos Correa. They will not have the chemistry that this infield has built over the past several years. I know that, but they could still be something to reckon with. So listen, lots to talk about. I'd love to know your thoughts, your opinions about all these things happening in Houston sports, and not just in Houston sports, what's happening around the league. So we're going to start, if you will, with the Houston. Hey, good morning, my favorite attorney, Charles Lamar Drayton. Welcome. I'm glad that you are here. Hey, Jermaine, finally in your office. I know, we've got to get you on the show. Let's talk about it for next week. Welcome, Keisha. I know, how about those? Go Astros, my friend Keisha. I'm still excited about the Astros. And listen, you know, I'm transparent. Y'all know I was a little salty about Justin Verlander, because I thought last season, I thought he should have been around, right? I thought he should have contributed something, if nothing else, moral support. But the fact that he threw 96 miles an hour a few days after the Astros had been eliminated, the World Series was decided that the Braves were the champions, he was throwing in Florida, I was salty about it, okay? I'm telling you. I wasn't feeling Justin Verlander, because I felt like he should have been more, he could have helped this Astros team. It looked to me and my feelings about it, I'm just telling you, that he was much more interested in free agency than his recovery and being a part of the Astros. However, they re-signed him, and a healthy Justin Verlander is a very good piece of the puzzle for this Astros team to get back to postseason. Because for me, y'all, listen, it's about Dusty Baker. I want the Astros to win. I mean, I'm objective, but I am an Astros fan, okay? I can cover the team objectively, but I'm a fan. I grew up here in Houston and watched the Astros forever. I was an Astros buddy as a kid. So, listen, I want the Astros to win, but I really, really, really want to see Dusty Baker get his chip. And Justin Verlander, having that arm, a healthy Justin Verlander in that rotation will be huge, all right? So, I'm over it, but y'all know I was salty about it. I told y'all. I told you how I felt. I was in my feelings a bit, but objectively, because that's what I do. I cover this thing objectively. We got to be glad he's there. Good morning, Sylvia, my sister, who was out on this crazy roads this morning. Glad that she's back in safely. And now, of course, if you're in the area, you might not even know that there was such nasty weather this morning. So listen. We're going to hear from a lot today. I'm going to let you hear from Nick Caserio. I'm going to let you hear from Steven Silas. And I'm also going to let you hear from Christian Wood. And this is one of my favorite times of year. You know, we've got free agency, everything happening, getting ready for the draft. You've got the NBA season winding down. And although the team I cover will not be in postseason, it's still a fun time of year, right? Because people are fighting for those final spots. And you've got baseball season getting ready to start, and I'm super excited about that. So let me hear from you if you've got some thoughts about any of those things. I want to let you hear from Nick Caserio. And listen, Nick Caserio met with the media, met with us on Saturday morning over at NRG, and you will probably hear some music in the background because it was still rodeo season here. So they were doing sound checks or something, but at least, unlike the last time we had a press conference at Energy Stadium, there's no alarms going off. The fire alarms went off. Remember when they introduced Lovie Smith as the new head coach? There was fire alarms going off in the background for a large part of that press conference. So Great rodeo season. It looks like they were very successful. For a person who lives in the area, I am glad they are gone. I'm glad it was successful. Now I'm glad it's over. So I can move around a little more freely, okay? Before I let you hear from Nick Caserio, let's just go back and for those who may not know, let me tell you what this Deshaun Watson trade, what it involved, okay? So it was Deshaun Watson to the Cleveland Browns and a later 5th round pick. The Browns sent to the Texans 3 first-round picks. That's a pick in this year's draft, 2023 and 2024, all first-round picks, and then an additional 3rd and 4th round pick in future drafts. Didn't really seem like enough to me. I understand that Nick Caserio's hands were tied, as people say, because Deshaun had the no trade clause, and you really could only move him to a place that he was willing to go. So, but it seems like a couple of 2nd round picks. It just seems like there should have been something else. I mean, if no players that you could have then turned and flipped and, gotten something for, definitely a couple other picks. What I will say, what I've said before, is that David Mulligetta, who is Deshaun's agent, is a negotiating beast. Okay? He got Deshaun the deal that put him in a position to have a no trade clause. I mean, he negotiated that deal that had a clause where Deshaun got to decide basically where he wanted to play. And then he negotiated this deal that got Deshaun 5 years, $230 million guaranteed. So he got a raise and he got an extension after not playing for an entire season. And listen, I think Deshaun's an amazing player, and I think that he'll be able to bounce back and as long as he's healthy, and I say that about any player, he will be able to, he's going to be fine, is what I think. But he still didn't play for a year. And there's nothing like the on-the-field competition. You can work out, you can be fit, you can do a lot of those things, but there's nothing like getting hit, right? It's nothing like being on the field. All that being said, and although the criminal investigation has been put to rest, so as it seems, right, unless something else comes up, in these sexual assault allegations, there's still 22 civil suits that are outstanding. Okay, so with all of that, David went out and got him the most guaranteed money ever in NFL history. Right? I need David Mulligetta on my team. I mean, you know what I'm saying? So he created a great deal. And also in this contract, because there is a thought that Deshaun will face a suspension next year. I think he'll be suspended. This is not whether I'm telling you I think he should. I'm saying I think he will face a suspension. Him not playing last year, let's be very clear, he was not suspended. That was not a suspension. Deshaun was still paid last year. It was a decision that he made not to play, and the Texans, they collectively worked it out. Nobody wants to say which side really didn't want to play, but he was not suspended from playing, right? Suspension is you don't play and you don't get paid. So he did not play last year, which he did not. He made it very clear he did not want to play for the Houston Texans. And he was paid. He was not suspended. So I do think he'll face a suspension this year. I don't know what it'll be. I don't know if it'll be the minimum of the 6 games, if they'll say for the season, or 8. I don't know what the number is. But here's what else is in that contract. His base salary for 2022 is $1 million. That means if he is suspended, the most that he'll lose in 2022 is $1 million. If he's suspended for the entire season. Otherwise, I think that's about $55,000 a game. Far less than the millions he would receive per game, because his salary, his annual salary in this place of being in this new contract of $230 million is about $46.5 million a year guaranteed. So he'll get the other $45.5 million. That's all I'm saying. Hell of a deal by his agent. So back to should the Texans have gotten more? Although Nick Caserio may have not had a lot of leverage per se, because what's the alternative? You don't move him, and you keep him on your roster for another year. So he's under the old contract, which was also guaranteed. So now you got to pay him $35 million this next year to sit him out and then have him not play for 2 seasons. So then next year when you try to move him, he hasn't played in 2 years and you know you're going to get less. They had to move him this year. So I get that piece. Did Nick get out negotiated? I don't know. I thought he should have gotten more. But here's the deal. It's done. And I'm going to let you hear from Nick Caserio. And listen, you've heard from Nick Caserio on this program before. You know that Nick is not very succinct. He answers questions in kind of a long, roundabout way, and sometimes they're not really answers. But nevertheless, he's the general manager of this football team, the Houston Texans, and I'm going to let you hear from him. So this is Nick Caserio, and then we're going to, of course, get to the Rockets and Astros, but I wanted to get the Deshaun conversation out. Many of you have thoughts about it. I've heard from you. I've done a number of shows over the past several days talking about it, and whether it's the contract, and or the fact that the Texans, what each side got, how good does it make the Browns? So here's the other thing: the Browns have a roster that allows them to be competitive right away. That allows Deshaun, if he's able to play this year, for them to go in and compete in that division. The AFC North is a beast of a division. You've got Lamar Jackson at quarterback, who, by the way, should definitely go and make sure he gets his check, right? You have Joe Burrow in that division. And then you have Pittsburgh. And although right now their quarterback seems to be Mitchell Trubisky, as long as you have a team that is... the Pittsburgh Steelers will always be a team you've got to watch, in my opinion. They're well coached, and so Trubisky may be the quarterback for good. They may do something else moving forward. Who knows? But that's going to be a competitive division, and so it'll be interesting. But Deshaun will. I mean, he's tough. I think he is one of the best quarterbacks in the league. So what does it do to the AFC? But here's the other thing that some of you have reached out to me about, and I get it. So this time last week, we felt like Deshaun Watson was going to be either playing for the New Orleans Saints or the Atlanta Falcons, and many thought the Falcons, because his team had told the Browns, no, you're out of it. You're not one of the finalists. So, and let's back up. Deshaun's team approached the Falcons, right? The Falcons didn't just come into this like the other organizations did. His team approached the Falcons, and the Falcons was like, oh, well, yeah. Now, the Falcons had Matt Ryan at the time. So the Falcons kind of basically ruined their relationship on their own. Deshaun couldn't make him do it. His team couldn't make him do it with their quarterback. And then they weren't a finalist. Deshaun went someplace else. That's the part that's like, yeah, that was kind of, So, clearly that created some challenges for Matt Ryan and the Falcons. The Falcons have since traded Matt Ryan to the Indianapolis Colts. So, the collateral damage of that move and just the way it happened, I think you should go out and get the best deal you can. But you'd like to think that there is a level of, I don't want to say integrity because I don't want to insinuate that there was a lack of integrity, but transparency about it or something. You'd like to think that. But hey, it's business, and Deshaun's got the deal he wants. I wish him well, and we'll see what happens with meaning civil lawsuits, which, remember, this whole conversation about Deshaun's behavior with the massage therapist and all of that started on a civil level. So it started with civil cases. So we'll see what happens. Here's Nick Caserio. I don't even remember which clip, because sometimes they all kind of run together. But no, here's Nick talking about it's about more than really just one player. It's about a whole team.
No, it's not about, and I think this is what's important. Everybody wants to make it about one person, one player, one particular thing, and that's important. But the most important thing is having a good team. So it's about having good players, having a good team, and then the team is what the fans are going to respond to. Do you have a good team? Can you go out there and support the team? So I would say, just philosophically, my belief is about having a good team, not trying to make it about one individual. Do you need good players? Absolutely. There's no question. You need good players, and you want players that have a connection, with the fan, and the fans can root for, and that's why they come. They come to cheer, they come to support, they want to see us do well. So try not to make it about one player. So it's going to take time. Nothing's going to happen overnight. This isn't about one player. It's about one draft. It's not going to be about one particular thing. It's going to be a continuation, accumulation of things over time. And if we do enough of the right things, then hopefully we put ourselves in a position where we have a product on the field that the city of Houston could be proud of.
You like cross.
So that's Nick Caserio. That was a pretty good soundbite for him. Hello, Marcy Brooks. Good morning. Welcome. Thank you for tuning in today. Jermaine says, thanks for explaining the Deshaun situation. Yeah, I think it's important to explain the whole, if we're going to talk about it, I want to talk about it from a level playing field of me understanding what I'm talking about and you understanding where I'm coming from. So, absolutely. Charlotte says, what do you think happens with Baker? Now, here's what's interesting. The Baker Mayfield, remember, before the Deshaun Watson trade, right, before the talk of even Cleveland being in this, Baker had said he was kind of breaking up with the Browns, right? I guess he had gone on social media and expressed his displeasure with his team. So I don't know what happens to Baker. I thought maybe Indianapolis, but obviously that's out because they have Matt Ryan. I'm not really sure. I think it depends on what happens with some other teams. We did see yesterday that Jameis Winston is the new deal with the Saints, so he will be playing for the Saints. Good for him. And, does he go out to San Francisco if Garoppolo isn't there? I just think it depends on other moves and other teams. It will be really interesting to see what happens with Baker Mayfield. I thought Indianapolis would have been one of his better shots, but, they went in clearly a different direction. So I don't know what's going to happen with Baker. And you make a great point, too. Deshaun not actually getting hit could have extended his career. It could. And that's why I say, 1 year, 2 years, I think it's tougher to sell that your guy's been out 2 years, that they come back and be in that starting spot. Not saying you can't overcome it, but I do think he didn't get injured last year, and especially on this Texans team, which was still not that great. And the offensive line had a lot of moving parts, and they basically had no running game. So, great point. Hey, good morning, Bobby Scott. Welcome. So, it will be interesting. I am interested to see as we go through free agency where Baker Mayfield will really end up, right? Oh, my goodness. So here's Nick Caserio also talking after the deal was done, and he met with us on Saturday. His kind of part two of Nick Caserio.
I think we're excited about moving forward. I think that's the big thing to take from this is to look forward, to think about what's ahead of us. I would say this, there's a lot of work that we need to get done, no question about it. We're a long way from being where we need to be. There's a lot of work ahead of us, but I think everybody's excited. Everybody is kind of anticipating the next step here in the offseason program, which should begin April 11th. We'll probably have kind of the players. We've had, I want to say 25, 30 players here over the last 2 to 3 weeks on a consistent basis. So we're preparing for the 2022 season, so I think everybody's excited for the opportunity in front of them. I would say no one player, no one thing is going to change this organization. It's not going to happen overnight. There's a lot of work, the purposeful work that's going to go into it, but I think we're heading in the right direction. The draft assets and the draft allocation, that'll kind of take care of itself, and we have the job to do on that front. But hopefully we're positioning ourselelves organizationally, put ourselves in a position where we can hopefully have some success, sustainable success for a long period of time. So we're not there yet. I don't want to misconstrue what I'm saying or anybody think otherwise. But I would say we're positioned here today, where the team is positioned currently, building on kind of the foundation that we put in place a little bit last year. some of the players that we re-signed here in free agency, which we can certainly talk about that. Happy to address some of that here as we go. And then not looking too far ahead, but I think as it sits here today, we have almost $100 million salary cap space at our disposal. So
So that's Nick Caserio. So if you got nothing else out of that clip, let me tell you what I got, and you can decide what you get. We're done with this, right? Moving forward, we still have a ways to go. That means we're still, next year we should be better, hopefully. My word's not his, but don't expect the big jump yet. We still are a ways away. So I take it to say, which is why I call this kind of phase 2 of the rebuild, because they started with kind of tearing it down, right? They had to tear it down, and now they are trying to put it back together, right? So don't expect a whole lot this year, but then the next year, maybe you start thinking, can this team be in competition for a playoff spot? That's my take on it. That's what I got from it. It doesn't mean we're not going to compete. Now, you've heard from Lovie Smith. He's a competitor. He wants to win, and he wants to win as soon as possible. But they got a lot of holes in this on this roster. They've got to get a running back. They've got to get a running back, right? Rex Burkhead, that was cute, but you got to get a real running back. And so they've also got to do some work on the offensive line. Now, they restructured Laramie Tunsil's deal. So here's another thing in all transparency. I wasn't really feeling Tunsil last year because he kind of quit on him, right? He did. And I know he's one of the best, left tackles in the league. That's a key position on the offensive line. That is a position, the reason it's so important is because that's the position that protects the quarterback's blind side, if you're a right-handed quarterback, which most of them are. That is why it's such a key position. They've restructured the deal. They seem to think he's all in. So, okay. But they still need some other help on the offensive line. They need a receiver. They need a running back. They've got to get a safety. They lost Justin Reed. They've got to get a cornerback. They need some help from on the defensive line from a pass rusher. You get my point? They got a lot of needs and a lot of holes to fill. So this team is a ways away from getting beyond the next phase, right? So that's why I say they're entering phase 2 of the rebuild, and this time next year, I think they'll be in phase 3, which should be working toward postseason, right? A legitimate shot at being in postseason. I love the fact that we have a legal genius that is a part of our show. So Attorney Charles Drayton says this: civil cases filed are not evidence of the veracity of the allegations made. Nothing has been proven. Only allegations have been made. And I think that's important to remember, because I know that there are still 22 civil cases, right? And I think Charles, and maybe any of you feel free to weigh in on this, I think it's the sheer volume of cases that gets people so... That tends to sway people into thinking something had to happen. There's so many cases. Something had to happen. But these are civil allegations, and so nothing has been proven. I think it's important to remember that. And so one of the questions I asked, and maybe I was asked this weekend on one of the TV shows, it was about whether I thought the Browns should have waited until the civil cases were decided, or if teams should have waited for the civil cases to be decided before Deshaun was moved. And I don't think so, because there are civil cases. And I do understand waiting for the criminal case, waiting to see, let me be careful, let me be clear about that, but waiting to see if criminal charges would be filed. So here's something else that I want to make sure that we're clear about. The criminal charges were not dismissed. They were never filed. They were criminal complaints that were presented to the DA, and the DA presented it to the grand jury, and the grand jury issued a no bill, said no, so no criminal charges, right? So the criminal charges were not dismissed. There were never criminal charges filed. I think that's important to make that clarification, right? And of course, Charles said that was the strategy of plaintiff's counsel. Right, the strategy of the plaintiff's counsel was the sheer number, right? The volume. And as we know, it started with the plaintiff's side really presenting their case, his case of all of his clients in the court of public opinion. And that's really where it has been until recently. They've now started, the depositions have started, and now they're actually talking about it. And, Charles, I'd be curious to know, do you think these cases get settled, or will it go to a court of law? And so here's my thought about it from no legal expertise. There are 22 separate cases, so there'll be 22 separate court cases, right? This is not just all one case and they all show up at one time. It'd be 22 separate incidences if they're not settled in court. I don't know if at what point Deshaun decides I don't want to have to keep coming back and forth to Houston. I think it just depends on how it plays out. I don't know, but I'd love to know what Charles thinks about it from a legal standpoint. And Tracy Jackson, hey, good morning, Tracy, says good for Mr. Watson. And Reginald says they're 3 or 4 years away. 3 or 4 years away from what, postseason? So I think that they're probably closer than 3 or 4 years from postseason. I'm not talking about winning the AFC, and definitely a Super Bowl. So maybe if that's what you're talking about, and I think it just depends on how they assemble this team. Charles says the volume was to create the public impression that something must have happened, but that is not proof. You're right. And thank you for reminding us of that. That is exactly, and that was a strategy. It was a strategy all along. It was because this is a conversation I keep hearing. Where there's smoke, there must be fire. If there are 22 allegations, that something must have happened. So again, we have to remember each of these cases separately. It is not an admission or any kind of proof that something illegal happened. And so yes, Reginald, yes, about Super Bowl. Is that what you're talking about? You think they're 3 or 4 years away from the Super Bowl? They are. There's a lot of work to do. So we'll see. We'll see now really how great Nick Caserio is at his job, because now he's got a full complement of draft picks. He's got more space under the salary cap. They've gotten rid of a lot of in terms of this whole culture and who they are. They've changed to next year. So they've changed who they are, right? The whole culture situation. They've moved players out that didn't fit who they want to be, and brought in players that they think will fit. Hey, good morning, Barbary. Speaking of Cleveland, do you think this will backfire for the Browns? You know what? If they win, it will not. And that's just the truth of the matter. At the end of the day, if Deshaun Watson is able to go in, here's the deal. I think that early, there could be some tension, right? Because there are people that are like, oh my gosh, you brought this guy in with these things hanging over his head. There will be some people that are not happy. But there's a few things that should happen. Depending on how the Browns and Deshaun Watson and company kind of show up in Cleveland, like how he shows up, what he says. And this isn't just because it's me, I wish his team would hire me to do some media coaching. I mean, because that's going to be so key. And not just for the initial time he has a press conference, but for the next couple of years. Like, he should get it ongoing. They all need it. But really how he navigates these conversations about, and granted, he didn't want to keep reliving these cases, but it is going to be important how he handles this moving forward. It really is. What he says. What does he do? Does he make any kind of commitment, donations to some women's groups? Does he ever, how does he respond? And I'll leave it at that. I'm not saying that he should admit that he did something wrong. But what he says will determine initially what the reaction is. But ultimately, if he's able to go there and lead this team further than they've been, they get into postseason, they make a run, they are able to win the division. Winning really does cure everything. And somebody asked me, well, the Browns, the Browns organization issued a statement and talked about how fully that they had investigated him and all of this. And here's the truth, and this isn't a knock on Deshaun. All the Browns really care about is he's really good, and with him we could be really good and successful. That's what matters to them. It is about that, and it is about the bottom line. So I hope that answers your question. I think it depends, right? This is an opportunity in terms of how they handle it. So Michael Scott says, how did he get such a large amount of his contract guaranteed? So first of all of his contract is guaranteed. And he did it because he's got a beast of an agent, right? So his agent was able to go in and sell the case about Deshaun Watson. Now the contract he was stepping into, right? His second contract that he had signed with the Houston Texans at the end of in the fall of 2020. That contract, the extension, all of that was guaranteed. So his agent, I wasn't a part of the negotiations, but he clearly went in and said, listen, here's who Deshaun Watson is. Like, here's what you get with this guy in terms of a player on the field. And prior to these 22 allegations, because that's what they are, they're civil allegations, he had been a stellar member of the community, right? He had been an active member of the Houston community. He had been well respected, well thought of, super supportive. And I imagine that David Mulligetta and his team put together a case and went in and clearly sold the Browns on, y'all have had some quarterback challenges. You should get this guy in here and let him be a part of what you do moving forward. And the best way to do that is to secure his future and to guarantee his money. I don't know. I'm not an agent, but I'm guessing it probably was something like that, Michael. But again, I need David Mulligetta on my team. Charlotte says, I think players will welcome him because Baker lost the locker room. It seems like Baker did. I've seen a couple of Browns players come out and kind of support Baker. But I think the players will welcome him. I don't know. I think Barbie was talking about the Browns in terms of just in that city and, with their fans. But in terms of the players, I think the players will. Deshaun will go in. And listen, players talk. I made my living in a locker room, and they have some conversations, right? And they will, they will welcome him if he comes in there and is the Deshaun Watson that I covered for the years that I had a chance to cover him. I think he will be able to lead the team. But I do think he's going to have some initial conversations because people want to make sure that you're going to be here moving forward and we're not going to have this kind of thing come up again. But I do think that they will welcome him. He's no Baker Mayfield, thank goodness. Baker's got a lot of growing up to do, and Deshaun's got some areas where he should probably grow as well. Not the same as Baker Mayfield. So you make a great point. Hey, Chef Allen, welcome. Good morning, all the way from New York. Unfortunately, we live in a world where corruption is real as a perception. So if you think it is true, is that what you're saying? I don't want to misquote what you meant by that. But yeah, there's perception's reality, and if that's what you mean, perception's reality for a lot of people. So what Tony Busby did with his plaintiff cases was to try to create a perception that it's a really big problem, and if all these people are coming and saying it's a problem, then something must have happened. And so I agree with you in that case. If he's a leader, the players will rise to the occasion. Yeah, you're right. They will rise to the occasion. And listen, Deshaun is a leader. He's got that kind of, like I said, covering him even when he was here as a rookie. He's you can't really coach leadership. So he has that. He is able to, I think, be a leader of men. I think that on the field, he's going to work hard. I'm sure that being a year away, he's probably hungrier than ever. Not that I ever thought he lacked the hunger for the game. I think he loves the game. And I can't even imagine, and listen, I'm taking nothing from what women have gone through who feel that they've, for whatever the challenges and things that happen. But just from covering Deshaun and knowing how much he loves to play, I know it was difficult. It had to be difficult to not be able to play the game he loved last year. So some may say, well, it's his fault. I'm not judge or jury. I'm just saying I know it was a tough time for him as well. I don't know the plaintiffs, so I can't speak for any of them. And I'm not speaking for Deshaun, but what I am saying is I know he's ready to get back on the football field. And I don't even think you have to know him, right? You have to know him to know that and ready to get back to doing what he does. Charles says maybe his money is guaranteed because his representation presented something to indicate he deserved it and the allegations should not be a factor. Yeah, I think that's clearly the allegations were not a factor. And let's be honest. I mean, can we be honest here? Just us. These teams don't care about that. Like, I'm a woman, and it'd be great to think that, well, teams really care and the league really cares. Well, they don't. Here's what they care about. They care about money, okay? Do you guys remember when people were saying we're boycotting because of the Colin Kaepernick situation? And so maybe there was a little bit, not a lot, a blip in the revenue, 5-6%. In the same year where every team got $246 million as a part of the TV contract. It's about the money for them. They want to win. So I agree. I am sure that the guaranteed money, as I said earlier, is based strictly on how David was able to go in, his agent, David Mulligala, and lay out, here's what you get with Deshaun Watson. Here's what he brings to your football team. Here's how it helps you in terms of winning, getting people in the stadium, selling product. I mean, all of it. And I'm sure that's how he got the guaranteed money. The business of sports, y'all, it's a business. And at the end of the day, these people that own these businesses want to make money and are willing to do what it takes to make the money. Now, the difference is there are some organizations that have administration and are built of people that and are built with people who look like who are better at it. Okay, the Texans organization hadn't been great at building to win. Now, what I will say to you is prior to this current administration with Cal McNair being in charge and Jack Easterby having a huge piece of what's going on, even when they weren't winning, prior to this leadership group, when Jamie Roots was still around, they made money. Jamie knew. He was president of the organization of all the non-football stuff. He knew how to build an organization, right? So now you've got a whole different group of people. You've got Grisham who's there. And listen, I wasn't personally a huge Jamie Roots fan. I thought he was good at what he does. He was friendly, but I mean, listen, I'm not here caping for him. I'm just telling you where the organization was. And I will tell you that last year, the organization not only couldn't get people in the stands, they were not thought of at a high level in terms of how they did business. Perhaps that will evolve and change, but they've got some areas to improve in. And so organizations are trying to make money, and it's just how you go about doing it, right? So there's that. My sister Sylvia, thank you so much. You're gonna make me cry. Saying I look like my mom like my mother more every day. My mom was a beautiful woman. You guys have seen me post pictures of her, so that is the highest compliment that you could give me. Thank you for that. So that's what I have on Deshaun Watson. Matt Ryan, as I mentioned, is going to the Indianapolis Colts. So here are the 4 quarterbacks in the AFC South in no particular order. You got Matt Ryan with the Indianapolis Colts. You've got Davis Mills with the Houston Texans. There's Trevor Lawrence with the Jacksonville Jaguars. And there's Ryan Tannehill with the Tennessee Titans. So Davis Mills at this point is the starting quarterback for the Houston Texans. I don't really see the Houston Texans picking a quarterback early in the draft. I don't know if they trade down. I don't know what they're going to do. I don't know what veteran they bring in to try to help this team to back up Davis Mills. But those are your starting quarterbacks in the AFC South, the division the Texans compete in at this moment. Chef says, good morning, Kim. We do live in a world where perception can be made to be reality in the minds of some. The timing of this challenge for Watson all started when he voiced he wanted out. Sorry about the typo early. Oh, okay, no problem. Yeah, and we talked about that, and I know there's some thoughts about it coming out when he wanted out. Hey, listen, I don't think that. Let me say this, and I'm going to move on and talk about something about the Houston Rockets, because the Rockets are here and those guys are going to be around. I don't think. I never really thought the Texans were behind the women coming out. I just didn't think it. I didn't. I'm sorry. They have way more to lose with that coming out, because they could have moved Deshaun last year before the trade deadline. It would not have been a year of this, right? Were it not for those allegations, because that's what they are. When I say that, let me say this: I do believe that if the allegations had come out and that Deshaun was still a full member of the Houston Texans and committed to the organization, I think that perhaps the organization would have helped those complaints go away. And I'm going to leave it at that and move on. I just don't. And they don't always do things that make a lot of sense. It makes no sense for the Houston Texans as an organization to want these allegations to come out with a person at this point who is now a commodity. Okay, if you're no longer a part of you're no longer in the circle in our family, you're a commodity. So as a commodity, I want to get as much as I can for you, and I can't do that. I'm hindered by that because of these allegations. So that's why I don't think that they were a part of it. At any rate, let's move on. Let's talk about those Houston Rockets. Okay. Listen, I know you say, Kim, how can you be, excited about a team? I'm pulling up their record that is going to be in the lottery again this year. So the Rockets are on the road. They play at Dallas tomorrow. The Rockets have won 18 games. They're 18-54. All right. So they will again be in the lottery. But what I'm telling you is it was also a total rebuild. And that this Rockets team, in terms of, I'm pulling up the standings. That's what I'm doing now. So the Rockets right now are 18-24. And so they have 18-54. I'm sorry. So they have, the worst record in the league, but Detroit and Orlando are close. Orlando is 19-53, and they're both 19-53. Orlando and Detroit. Okay. Oklahoma City is 20-52. So the Rockets there's 10 games left. They will be in the lottery, right? They'll have another shot at getting another young top draft pick in this year's draft. And then remember all the collateral draft picks that Rafael Stone got in the trade for James Harden. So I say that to say the Rockets' future is bright. I think it is. They're young. They're not there yet, and but I think they've got a lot to be excited about. So last night, the Rockets defeated the Washington Wizards, 115-97, I believe. They trailed by as many as 23 points. They came back and won that game. Christian Wood was a beast. Here's Stephen Silas after last night's game talking about the win and just the excitement and coaching this team.
Amazing. I mean, that's why you coach. Stuff like that, moments like that where he just, every shot was, he was obviously in the zone, and for him to get that appreciation from the fans really means a lot. But he earned it. He earned every bit of it. So that was really fun.
You guys are showing a tendency to cut into deficits before, but kind of maybe lose a little bit of it. What was different tonight about getting it from 23 down to 8 and eventually getting on that?
Yeah, tonight we were like, we just got to cut the lead, and we didn't put our heads down when we got down big, and we were like, all we got to do is cut the lead a little bit and get it to 10 and we'll be fine. And the big three off the glass going into halftime was a big play because it made it a 12-point game. And as bad as we were and as far down as we got, in the locker room, they were like, okay, we're moving in the right direction. You know, we just have a few things we got to fix and we'll be fine. But the spirit tonight and the kind of will was a little bit different as far as like, we're good. We'll if as long as we do what we're supposed to do, we can come back in this game. And we did.
So that was head coach Steven Silas last night. And listen, he has, and I'm going to say this real quick. I've said it before, but think about when he took over this team. Steven Silas, the head coach of the Houston Rockets, when he got this job, which is almost 2 years, it was 2 years ago this summer, he took the job, was given the job when, and when he took the job, James Harden and Russell Westbrook were both part of the team, right? And then shortly thereafter, like the bottom fell out, right? Russell was like, I don't want to be here. So they made a deal and moved Russ. And there was conversations, you guys didn't know it publicly, but behind the scenes, James didn't want to play with Russ anymore because, James falls out of love with people all the time with his teammates. And so Russell, because James was the Rocket, right? So again, somebody else he wasn't happy with. So they moved Russ to the Wizards, and they got John, I can't think of his name right now. Wall. Not John Wall. They got, who do they get? Yeah, that's who it is. So anyway, then James was like, I don't want to be here. Really? So you went from having a team with 2 former MVPs to none. And that was officially the start of the rebuild, right? Because the complexity of your whole team changed. And so you had to move forward and build with it because that's what you had to work with. So I think he has handled it well. One time, I think, and the whole time I've covered him, there's one game that he wasn't nasty or ugly, but he was clearly frustrated. And he came back the next day and he apologized about it. That never, ever happens, right? That never happens. So you like what Steven Silas has done. He has been weathering the storm. It is not over. I mean, there's no way you're excited about being 18-54, but when you have a game last night, when your team comes back, and they've had some good wins, they've won in Utah on the road, they've beat some good teams. They beat Memphis. I mean, they've had some good wins along the way that show you what they can possibly be. So good for them. And it's just really kind of good to see. Michael says, why do the Astros keep losing their star players for Springer and now Carlos Correa? So frustrating. Michael, it is frustrating, right? Because, and they're not just players that are, they're good players, but they're guys that you like, right? The community likes, not that we matter, those of us in the media, but the media likes, covering Springer, covering Correa, you like covering those guys. And I think it's because Jim Crane has an approach and philosophy about how he's going to build his team. And he has been true to that. Now, you may say, well, what about Justin Verlander? He gave him all that extra money after you can't really fault Justin Verlander for not playing last year. He had Tommy John surgery. He was out for the year. He was guaranteed the money. That's just the nature of the business. But they did come back and give him a qualifying offer. He accepted it. He came back, right? Jim Crane's philosophy seems to be that I would love to have these players. I'm sure he would. But in order to keep, building for the long run, building for the postseason, building to be a perennial winner and a competitor in the hunt for, ALCS and ultimately a world championship run and world championship title, I've got to be able to have a complete roster. And so if I make that commitment to just one player, it's difficult. And I don't know. I mean, that seems to be, and here's the other thing. I think that one of the challenges, one of the things that Crane has been kind of firm about is these long-term deals where you're paying the $300+ million. He doesn't want to be paying $30 or $40 million in those latter years for a player who's not producing. And we've seen that happen in other places. So I guess that's why, but you're absolutely right. It is so frustrating. It is so frustrating that you keep losing some of the better players, the stalwarts to this organization, if you will. But listen, I believe in Dusty, and I can't wait to see what Pena looks like, the youngster that has been tearing it up in AAA. I know he's not Carlos, but I remember when Carlos was coming up and we were excited about Carlos. It's just, that's a tough guy to come behind. Carlos Correa was so many things for this organization, and not just in terms of what he gave you on the field, but the leadership he gave you in the clubhouse was really just so big. All right, I'm going to play this last clip before we get out of here and let you hear from Christian Wood, who had the monster game last night. Pretty much, Christian, did you think everything you shot would go in? And this is what he said. Whoops. This is what he said.
I would probably say that last step back that I shot, that's when I feel like everything I was throwing up was just going in.
Not until then.
Nah.
Is that a heat check?
Yeah, that was for sure a heat check, for sure. But, my teammates did a good job of giving me the ball and trusting me to close out the game in the fourth quarter. And, I didn't let them down.
Is there a moment that you can point to in this game that ignited you and the rest of the team to go on the run that you guys did?
It was really just the defensive, effort that we were just putting in as a team, guys helping guys out on a back end. We were in a switch defense, and Alpi was making huge plays, blocking shots, and, guys are just building off of our defense. And offensively, we just started clicking, and it started with our defense, though.
How did it feel?
So that was Christian Wood. I won't make you guys listen to all of the switch defense and all that. We're going to have a show where we talk about some of these things. I'm going to start implementing a segment like in Chalk Talk where I explain what some of that lingo is for some of you who watch who may not know. Just so that you can be, my goal is that the Chalk Talk audience are the most educated and knowledgeable fans around. So as always, I appreciate you guys being a part of the show and sticking in here. And Chef Allen says in 3 years they're going to be a force in the NBA. Their challenge will be to remain diligent and positive. Yeah, I think if you can remain positive through these first 2 seasons, because remember, all of these young guys, and that's a great point. Thank you for that, Chef. You come from winning backgrounds, right? And so when you come into the NBA and you come to a team that is a lottery team, right? You're not winning a lot. If you can remain positive and diligent through these times, you can remain positive when you start to win, when you start to really see the fruits of your labor, because it's different. There's so much to adjust to for these young guys when they come into the league. Travel, back-to-back games, the length and intensity of the season, and just the speed of the game. What you will hear players say a lot is the game starts to slow down for me because it's so fast. I don't care how good you are. When you come in and play at this level, this game is so fast. And so it starts to slow down for them. Jalen's talked about that. Josh Christopher's talked about it. KPJ. So it does start to slow down a little. But I think if you can be positive through these points of being 18 and 54, you can be positive when you start being a 500 team, when you start inching above 500, when you start being a team that has a shot at postseason. So listen, their future is bright. The Astros' future, I think, is still bright because they have built through the farm system, and so they have players to pull from, and we will just see what happens. I'm super excited about the spring, and that all of you guys are still with me. Remember, if you will, whatever platform you're watching this broadcast on, please share it with your community so that we can continue to grow our tribe and to grow our audience. Thank you, Felicia. She says, I'm new, but you seem great. I appreciate that. Thank you so much for being a part. I hope that you'll be back. We're here every Tuesday at 10 10:10 a.m. Central Standard Time, unless there is something that we just got to talk about before that, right? And then I'll be all over the place here and also on Instagram. But listen, thank you for tuning in today. Remember, if you're not registered to vote, people, get registered to vote. If you are not vaccinated, I'm encouraging you to get vaccinated and to get boosted. Things are going really well, but there's the COVID places and other variants that are popping up in other parts of the world. Let's just try to stay protected and stay safe. And as always, remember, do something kind for yourself and do something kind for somebody else. Make it a great week. I'll see you next time. Bye.